In this episode, we talk about what to do when you feel anxious. Get excited because this is Tiny Leaps, Big Changes. Welcome to another episode of Tiny Leaps, Big Changes, where I share simple strategies you can use to get more out of your life. My name is Greg Clunis, and in this episode, we are talking about anxiety. And more specifically, we're talking about what to do when you're sort of in the middle of feeling anxious, when you are having a little bit of a panic attack, when you are freaking out, when your heart rate is speeding up. We're going to talk about the simplest thing you can do. And the truth is, you already know what it is. You've heard this advice before. So to make it more valuable, we're going to go into why it works, why it helps so much. So make sure you stick around for that. Before we jump in, though, be sure to click subscribe wherever you're consuming this. And if you haven't checked us out on YouTube yet, youtube.com/Greg Clunis. We're doing this podcast in video going forward. So make sure you head over there, click subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers ASAP. So youtube.com/Greg Clunis. All right. So before we talk about what to do, let's first sort of define what anxiety is. Now, if you've ever experienced it, you know what it feels like. But the actual definition is intense, excessive, and persistent worry and fear about everyday situations. Fast heart rate, rapid breathing, sweating, and feeling tired may occur. Now, the reason that we broke down the definition of anxiety and sort of what it actually is because of that last part. Fast heart rate, rapid breathing, sweating, and feeling tired may occur. They're not the same thing. And that's something that I think people don't realize, is that those things are symptoms of anxiety. They're not the anxiety itself. And so why does that distinction matter? Well, because if they are just symptoms of anxiety, if they're caused by the anxiety, and those two things are separate, then it means that a part of what causes you to feel anxious and sort of be in that state and keep getting worse and worse are those symptoms. If you can control to some extent or reduce the symptoms, then the actual anxiety can start to be reduced as well. So that's the thesis that we're playing off of. And the basis for this is what you've heard of this before. It's the mind-body connection, the brain-body connection. So in the study, I'm going to pull a quote here. Quote, in the study, researchers found a number of areas in the brain that are directly linked to the adrenal glands, which control the body's response to stress. So coming out of the quote here for a second, basically they ran a study to confirm whether or not there was a legitimate connection between the brain and the body, in the sense that the body's experiences could control sort of the brain's experience and vice versa. So obviously there's a connection in the sense that the brain controls the body, but there is this movement going around and this theory going around that the body can actually control the brain as well. And it's a back and forth relationship. So going back to the quote, in the study, researchers found a number of areas in the brain that are directly linked to the adrenal glands, which control the body's response to stress. Specifically, the researchers found links between the brain's cerebral cortex, where many types of higher level thinking take place, including decision making and memory, and the inner part of the adrenal glands, called the adrenal medulla. This region releases key hormones involved in the body's reaction to physical and emotional stress. Now, I'm going to link to that full article so you can check it out on your own time. But basically what they found is that there actually is a link between the body's stress center and the brain. And what they found is that in the same way that the brain can trigger your body to have these stress reactions. So going back to the definition here, fast heart rate, rapid breathing, sweating, and feeling tired. those things may occur. They're not required. They may occur. And they may occur because the brain sends a signal through this connection with the adrenal medulla, and that releases hormones involved in the body's reaction to physical and emotional stress. And so the brain says, wow, I'm freaking out. I'm anxious. And it sends a signal to the adrenal medulla. The adrenal medulla says, hey, boys, we're anxious. Let's sweat. Let's speed up the heart rate. Let's do X, Y, Z. And it just sort of confirms that we are anxious. And so those symptoms come out, and it feeds the cycle. It feeds the machine. So what they also found, and again, I'll link to the full article, is that connection works in the opposite direction. And so if your adrenal medulla was to send out hormones that did not cause those effects, and I'm struggling to find the right words here for this, but the essentially what I'm trying to say is, if through this connection you were able to reduce the symptoms, then that could also have a calming effect on the actual issue, the anxiety, rather than just the symptoms. And so the solution, or one of the solutions, the suggested solution, when you are feeling anxious, when you're starting to feel these symptoms, is controlled breathing. Now, I said at the beginning of this, you've heard this advice before. This is nothing. This is not rocket science. This is nothing brand new. But it does work. And it works because of this connection between the brain and the adrenal glands and sort of the inner areas of our adrenaline system. If we are able to slow things down, to take those symptoms, the rapid heart rate, sweating, breathing, and feeling tired, if we can take those things and slow them down, get our adrenal system to calm down a little bit, stop pumping out those hormones, that can send a signal from the adrenal medulla back to the brain, back to the cerebral cortex, saying, hey, everything's cool down here. We're good. You're good. And that can help you to calm down and to relax and to get back to a place of making higher level decisions. And that's really what it comes down to. Because if you've ever experienced anxiety, you know it's not a state where you are making very high level decisions, or you're capable of making very high level decisions. It's an animal instinct. The cerebral cortex starts to shut down, and you are put in this situation where your ability to make decisions on logical information, that starts to suffer a little bit. That starts to decline a little bit. And it's because you're getting hormones and all of these things pumped into your body and into those areas. But if we can calm down the adrenal system, then we can start to make logical decisions again, and that reduces the anxiety overall. So deep breathing. Now, why does this work? Well, I'm going to link to an article in this called The Science of Slow Deep Breathing. It's from Psychology Today. But the essential idea is that slowing your breath slows your nervous system and can act as a brake on the other parts of your body. It's a little bit complex, which is why I did not just quote it directly here. Out of context, none of it would have made much sense. You really have to sit down and read the full thing, which I highly recommend. But the idea is that if you slow down your breath, it can slow down the nervous system, and that can send a signal and act as a brake to that adrenal medulla and all the hormones it's pumping out and so on and so forth. And then that causes a reduction in the level of anxiety that you're feeling. And that's why deep, controlled breathing, slowing down, just really taking a moment to inhale, just really owning that and slowing yourself down when you need it most. That's why it works, because it can slow down your central nervous system and it acts as a brake. And as a sub point here, it gives you a sense of control, because anxiety, it feels like everything's spinning out of control. It feels like you're not able to stay on top of things. by controlling your breathing, it gives you something to latch onto, something that you can control and feel is yours. Feel is that you have control over for that moment. So the next time you are feeling anxious, slow down. Take deep breaths. I know it seems silly. I know if you're not feeling anxious right now, you're like, Craig, this is common advice. Like, why would you tell us this? I get it. I understand. But I have found that when I better understand why something works, it makes it more likely that I'll do the thing. And so the purpose of this episode was largely just to try and explain to the best of my ability, because I am not in any way an expert in this stuff, but to the best of my ability, try to explain a little bit about why this happens, why anxiety causes the issues that we feel, and to create that distinction that the heart rate, the rapid breathing, the sweating and feeling tired, all of that stuff, that's not the anxiety. Those are the symptoms. Those are caused by the connection between your cerebral cortex and the adrenal glands. It's caused. It's a causation. It's not the same thing. And by controlling one of them, by slowing down your breathing, you can start to gain control over the other piece as well. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, be sure to click subscribe wherever you're consuming this. Head over to YouTube if you haven't already, youtube.com/Greg Clunis. Be sure to click subscribe there so we can get to 1,000 subscribers and beyond. As always, I've been Greg Clunis. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember that all big changes come from the tiny leaps you take.